How's it going, everyone? My name is Dr. Brent Pritt, and this is The Science of Falling. Today, I'm going to be teaching you one of the most technical but also efficient falling techniques you can possibly learn for yourself or your client/patient. This technique is called the shoulder roll, also known as the parkour roll or the safety roll. Now, the reason it's called the safety roll is because it is one of the best ways to make sure when you fall, you are safe. Now, it's called a roll because we turn into a little ball and we roll. And as we probably all know, balls take up a lot of force and disperse it well. Versus a square block, essentially, stops and takes all the force at once, doesn't disperse much of it at all. So that's what the idea of this technique is. It's all about dispersing force throughout the body, taking as little of it at one time as possible, and getting up and walking away from a fall without injury. Just let me show you what that looks like, and then we can talk a little more about it. So, as you can see from that fall, a roll going forward, but it was a little different than a typical roll we think of, like a gymnastics roll, where we go over the spine directly. This one goes from shoulder to opposite hip, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But the reason we don't want to do a gymnastics roll is because when you're in the real world and there's not mats everywhere, your spine is sticking out when you do a gymnastics roll, and it's going to hurt and cause injury. So the parkour roll, safety roll, shoulder roll, whatever you want to call it, very similar to a martial arts roll, but there are some differences. Now, the reason it comes with the name parkour roll as well is because parkour practitioners created this roll in order to use it in the real world, whereas martial arts, oftentimes we're on a pad similar to the one I'm at right now. It is very effective if you're doing a martial arts roll to do it on the pad, but the minute you go outside, you don't have as much force dispersion and you don't have as much shock absorption when you hit the ground, whereas with the parkour roll, with the using the hands a little bit more and using the shoulder in a different manner, takes up a lot more of that force, leads to less injury, and is made for the real world where we're living in a concrete jungle, and if you fall, you're hitting a rock every single time. So let's get into the technique of this roll and kind of let's build from the ground up. So let's start with the hand position. The hand position is essentially starting with a diamond. So think about catching a football basically without the overlap. So if you're playing on the Raiders and you're going for the catch the ball and you got the diamond right there, and then all of a sudden it comes in and you catch it. Same idea, except you're catching your body on the ground. So we got the diamond. This diamond and the arms in general are going to lead your body to which shoulder you're rolling on. So if we take this diamond and we put it to our left, we're going to be rolling over our right shoulder. If we take this diamond and we put it to our right, we're going to be rolling over the left shoulder. So in the air, if you're doing this, or on the ground, I want you to get some tape and put some lines down. You're going to think of a box. And on these boxes, you have these two corners. That is where you're going to put your hands. You're going to put your triangle hands in those corners. And this is the first kind of exercise to do with your client or yourself, just to get used to where you're putting your hands and the position of your fingers. So just do this right here. Very simple. Takes a minute. Once you get that down, it'll be motor memory for the most part. Now we can take this to the mat if you're not doing that already. And again, we draw those corners and then we just do this right there. Simple, not putting much weight through your hands, just getting the motor pattern down. Once we have that down, you have to add in what the neck is doing during this roll. The neck is going to be tucking in the direction that the hands are. So if my hands are to my left, and as I previously said, that means we're going to be rolling over our right shoulder, we are going to tuck our head to the left. So when you're doing this, you're tucking your head into that gap you're making right here, essentially protecting it from the ground when we go into the roll. So let's do that on the right, and I'll explain what's going to happen on the ground to make this into more of an exercise for you and your client. We go to the right, so put your fingers into that corner in the right, That means we're rolling over the left shoulder. So we want to tuck our head to the right. Get it in the circle right here for protection. So let's bring that to the mat now and really work on a drill we can do to make that motor memory, make sure it's there when we need it. And this drill is going to be really good for an older client, even if you don't think that their bone density or their strength is going to be enough to get them into the full roll. This is going to be good because it will work on both those, the bone density and the strength, and get them ready for the roll later on down the line if that is in the cards for them. So down to the mat, imagine those corners, get your hands in the triangle position. If we're going to go to the left, you're going to tuck the head to the left. It means we're going to roll over the right shoulder. The exercise part of this is to basically start prepping ourselves to get more into the rolling pattern. So you're going to take the hands, go down, do a slight press, come back up. Other side, going to the right, come down to that diamond shape into that imaginary corner, tuck the head, go into a slight press, come back up. So when you're doing this as an exercise, it's just gonna look like this. Now as you're doing this, if you can tell, I'm not letting my elbow touch the mat. The reason for this is when you're rolling, if that elbow hits a ground, concrete, whatever it might be, you can damage that elbow quite well right there. So from the very beginning, give good habits. Don't let the elbow touch. All about absorbing like you're a spring coming in without touching any bony prominences. That is the first exercise. Like I said, that works on some bone density. A lot of our clients will not have been on the ground or even on all fours using their arms in this manner for a very long time, if not decades. So this is just good to get that strength back and that bone strength back in general. So now that we have that down, that is all about the beginning of the roll. That's all about the arm mechanics, the head mechanics. Let's talk a little bit about actually doing the roll. So I'm gonna turn around. Now when you roll, remember I said if you put your hands to the left, you're going to be rolling over that right shoulder. And like I said before, this isn't a gymnastics roll. You're not going from spine to spine along the center. You're actually rolling from shoulder to opposite hip in a diagonal, what I like to call meat to meat, because we're not rolling over only bone, we're rolling over a lot of soft tissue, a lot of fat in some people, a lot of muscle in some people. So if we're rolling on our right, what's going to happen is we're going to put our hands to the left, tuck our head to the left, and then from right shoulder to left hip will be our roll. So we're essentially going to look like this, coming down, pushing over. That same thing would happen on the other side. So if we're rolling over our left shoulder, we are putting our hands to the right, head to the right, and then we would come down, rolling from the left shoulder to the right hip. We would tuck, come across. So now that we have those concepts, pause the video, really think those things over, understand it, rewatch those parts a little bit. It can get confusing sometimes. We have all the upper body mechanics essentially in the bag now. So let's talk about getting into the actual roll. Now, for a lot of people, just like I said earlier, they haven't been on their hands and knees. They haven't really had all that force in their upper back, their body, since they were probably a kid and they used to roughhouse. A lot of my patients haven't even jumped, and I mean on their feet, in decades, let alone be on the ground rolling around. So we need to get them used to the roll. And this is where I think the gymnastics roll is probably the most useful, because if you have your patient working on a soft surface, whether that be grass, whether that be a nice mat, or whatever it is, it could be a pile of blankets, it could be pillows, it doesn't matter, as long as it's soft enough for them to absorb some force. You need to get them used to rolling, and that's where the gymnastic roll comes in, because it's simple, most people know how to do it, and it's effective, and if you do it on a matted surface, they won't get hurt. So just have them do a nice little somersault, have them do it a couple times. The really good thing with the somersault is you can get them used to tucking into a roly-poly as hard as they can, which is something you want to do in a normal roll to absorb more force. If you're rolling and you don't tuck, what happens is you have a flat back and then you turn into that square that I talked about earlier, that just stops. It's a braking force. But if you really tuck as hard as you possibly can, get into a roly-poly, you're going to keep on going, and that force is just going to be dispersed along the curve of your spine. Now, for some people, and I myself included a little bit, you'll notice that their mobility in their spine just isn't there. So maybe the lumbar spine doesn't round. They have a really lordotic curve. It doesn't reverse when they bend over, and it's just kind of flat. That is going to be something you're going to have to work on, because if you don't have mobility in that lumbar spine, what will happen is it will be used as a brake, and it will instantly stop the roll, creating pain, force, and you even kind of jut a little bit. You'll hit it, and you'll stop, and you'll kind of do a little stagger, and you'll eventually get to your feet, but it won't feel great when you're doing it. So that gymnastic roll is used to get people used to it, get used to tucking their spine, getting into a roly-poly. And once they master that, we can move on to the next step of learning the parkour roll. The next step is all about learning to use the shoulder and hip as a unit to roll diagonally instead of doing the gymnastics roll. Now, this is going to incorporate almost everything we did with a different hand position. So if we want to practice rolling over our right shoulder, what we're going to do is we are going to put our hands in that left position, just like we talked about. From here, you are going to take your right hand and you're going to thread the needle through your arms so that your scapula, not the top of your shoulder, your scapula is going to be on the mat. Apparently, I'm not very graceful. I'm falling over here. So you're going to put it on the mat. And as you can tell from me falling over, you can fall over with this. The balance is going to be a little difficult, but it basically sets you up to roll. All right. Once you have that arm threaded, that back leg, as you can see, is going to be stuck all the way out. This is how you're going to get over. You're going to give yourself a little push and get you into that roll. So, hands in the triangle to the left. Right hand is going to thread through. You're going to get on the right scapula. The left leg is on the ground and the right leg is on the knee. What you're going to do now is you're going to push over with that left leg off the ground, leading to the roll. And during that roll, I went from the right shoulder to the left hip. So I'm going to show it to you from the back now so you see what's going on. Again, we're doing the right shoulder, left hip. Now this technique, as you just saw, usually doesn't end up in the straightest roll possible. So be aware of that. Be aware of your surroundings. Once we get into the real roll with momentum, you go a much straighter and it's much easier to control. But anyway, let's do this again. So doing right shoulder roll. Hands to the left. Right hand is going to thread through. Left leg is going to go straight back, foot on the ground. From here, you're going to put all your weight on your right scapula. And then you simply push off the ground with this leg, leading to that roll. Again, not the most graceful, so make sure you have room to go around. This technique is not meant to give you a straight roll. It is really meant for you to learn how to do the mechanics of that part of the roll. All right, doing it again, but this time instead of rolling over the right shoulder, we're gonna roll over the left shoulder. I'll go through this one quicker because you kind of got the mechanics from the last two demonstrations. So, if we're rolling over our left shoulder, think about which direction our hands need to be in. They need to be on the right side with that right head tuck. Once we're here, we're rolling over the left shoulder. That means our right leg needs to come out because we're going from left shoulder to right hip. Think of that diagonal. From here, you're going to push that leg off. You're going to push yourself over, tuck the head. And that was a little bit straighter, actually. So, as you notice, I come back up. Let's do that from the other side. So if I'm rolling over my right or left shoulder, hands are going to be to the right. Left hand is going to thread. Right foot's coming out. Left scapula on the ground. And then you're going to push, come back up. I recommend you doing this a lot with your client or yourself, whoever's learning the technique. This is going to be the groundwork, essentially, of the entire upper body portion of this roll, starting from the hands, to the tucks, to the shoulder to opposite hip, and the actual idea of rolling over. This is essentially the roll in its most basic form, in its easiest form. So now once you have that down, your client's good at that. They have enough strength to get them over. They have enough strength to kind of control the body coming down. We need to work on the actual roll. So come to the edge of whatever mat you're using, go to the grass, whatever it is, and you're gonna come basically to a crouch position. And we're doing all this really low at first because we're gonna reduce the impact as much as possible until their technique is near flawless. So once we're here, we're in this nice crouch position. You can do it from the knees if you must, but I usually like crouch position, gives you a little more leeway. From here, go through everything again. So essentially, you're gonna put your hands, right roll, we're gonna go through this quick. Right roll, hands to the left. Tuck the head to the left. You're gonna come down to the shoulder, so allow yourself to go forward, and then come back up. Now, one thing I wanna say, and something I just did that was bad, was I allowed my leg to hit the ground first. As you see, I'm sitting on my leg. If we're in this position, and we're coming up from a roll right here, and this leg hits like this, my ankle, if this was concrete, is getting smashed. My knee can get smashed. That can lead to severe bruising, cuts, and even worse if we have quite a bit of momentum. So be aware of that. So when you're coming out, try to have good habits. And let me show you what a good habit is. A good habit is essentially rolling out onto your feet in the similar position that you started. So if I'm right here, coming out, up onto my feet. And see, as you can tell, my ankles don't get hurt. My feet are there. I can stand back up. And I'm back to my everyday life, no worse to wear. So that was a right shoulder roll. I'm gonna show you the left shoulder roll from that position. From here, hands to the right, head tucked to the right. We're gonna go to the back of the left shoulder, coming over to our feet, because we want good form. We wanna create good habits and not emphasize laziness that will lead to injury down the road. So that was how we're gonna get into the actual roll. That is the simplest version of the entire roll. So now we gotta take that up a notch. And what you do to do that a little bit more practically is we start down here, and you're slowly gonna have your patient go up and up and up and up and up until they're all the way up to the top. Now, once you're up to the top, or even down here a little bit, we wanna add in the leg positioning. This is the last key piece to this entire puzzle here. If you're rolling over your right shoulder, you want your right leg to come first, because essentially what's gonna happen is, if I'm coming into the roll, I have some momentum, I'm running, something happened, I tripped, that right leg comes down, I'm gonna go to my right shoulder. I am crouching with this leg, trying to bring myself as close as possible to the ground, and then I'm gonna reach out. So if this leg was in front, what happens is, the left leg, I get crossed up and I get to a point where I can't go physically any deeper because my thigh and my trunk are hitting each other. But if I do the leg I'm rolling on the shoulder with, so if I'm doing both rights, I can come down and I get a little more wiggle room over here to get down towards the side I need to go to. So if I get a little crossed up, I'm okay, I can still get there. So be aware of that. The shoulder you're rolling on is a side with the lead foot. So if we think about it, the upper body and lower body are gonna be almost opposite. So if my upper body is going left with my head and my arms because I wanna go over a right shoulder, my left foot, or my right foot, excuse me, should be going forward. So see how it's kind of a diagonal again here of things acting in the front. Now when we're doing this, the back foot isn't being lazy. The back foot can be our control foot. It kind of directs us. Think of it as a rudder. So if our foot's over here, we're gonna go a little more sideways. If our foot's over here, we're gonna go more this way. You want that foot going almost in line with your front foot. So it should be kind of doing a cartwheel type movement forward. So let me show you what a full roll looks like using these foot mechanics. We've already gone over the top enough, so I won't reiterate that again. So the right shoulder roll means right foot goes forward, coming down, coming back up. Up to the feet. Because if we go up to the feet, we reduce injury to the bones of the ankle and the leg. Do a left shoulder roll, coming down. That means the left foot comes forward. Gonna do that one more time just for a reiteration. Right leg, if we're doing right shoulder roll, comes first. And then if the left shoulder is going first, that means the left leg goes first. Awesome. So that's going to be the entire shoulder roll at its most basic controlled form. If you want to make this more intense for your client or yourself to make it more real world, you can do various things. You can jump into it. You can do the same variation. We can do standing long jumps. You can run into it. You can do various forms of this, all adding velocity, adding height, whatever you want to do. But make sure that every time you make a different change and make it harder, you master it at that level of difficulty before moving on. Now, there's one thing I want to note going into a roll with some more velocity or height. You need to absorb with the legs a little bit. So if I'm jumping, make sure you don't land stiff-legged. Make sure you get down, crouch into it, and really absorb as much as you can with the legs. Then use the arms to guide the movement. Come down, use that back trailing leg as a rudder and get you to go where you need to go, and then come out of it unscathed. All right, there you have it. It was a long video, but hopefully it was informative. That is the parkour, shoulder, safety, roll, many names. Perfect for falling, very technical, takes a long time to learn. But whether you are a younger person, whether you are an athlete, a house mom, an older person who has bone issues, learning the progressions to this exercise is going to be useful for a variety of reasons, whether that be strength, whether that be bone density issues, or if it's just learning the roll to actually do the roll and be safe in your everyday life. Highly recommend learning any part of this or all of it. All right, see you next time.